Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday morning. We are past the middle of July. Well, almost. I mean, today's the 14th. It'll be the middle of July tomorrow, and then before you know it, you blink your eyes, it's done. I mean, August around the corner. Who would have guessed? It's insane. I know when people get annoyed when I say that, but I mean there's real time, which obviously you can account for in seconds, minutes, and hours, and then there's the feeling of time, which is a whole lot more complicated. Either way, I hope your day's off to an awesome start today. Sure, had a busy week this week. Been into the office every day except Monday. I'm going in today, going tomorrow, which I know is normal for a lot of us again, but it's feels weird. And driving to meetings and things. I was in a meeting yesterday where there must have been 25 people. We went to Ogilvy in Johannesburg, which is just terrific. And it's so nice to see people. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, right? But it hasn't, like, I haven't had a slew of meetings like that for a while. So it felt a bit odd to kind of stand in a room. We did a little presentation, and Greg and Barrett and Mash were there, and it was just nice to be around people. Like, I know that these are the things that used to drive me crazy. Like, meetings were always, oh, do we have to do this? Can't we just, can't we just speak to them on the phone or send them a text or whatever? But it's good to see people. It's good to connect that way, and I think there's a need in all of us to do that, which we've been missing out on. Anyway, we've got Phumi joining us in a little while. Phumi Mashiko, who's regularly here on a Thursday. And we've got the Burning Platform coming up. I think there are going to be lots of people who are very excited about today's Burning Platform. Two really cool guests joining Phumi and I. The first, a returning champion who everybody loves, Kanthan Pillay, who has been missing, notoriously absent from the Burning Platform for some time. But I'm pleased to report he will be back this morning. He has a rare break in his schedule of being a dad and doing all the dad stuff that takes up most mornings for him. My brother's the same. He has to drop the kids, and then my sister-in-law fetches them. I think that's the way it works in a lot of households at the moment. Shared responsibility for ferrying the children around. But Kanthan will be with us. And this morning, I'm pleased to say, Ian Cameron, who is the star of that YouTube clip that was doing the rounds last week. In fact, we spent much of Thursday's show last week talking about Ian Cameron, and Dory's managed to track him down with Simpiwe. They found the guy. He is going to join us this morning. He's the man who stood up to Becky Cele just last week, which is really, really cool. Good to hear from a South African who's, I mean, we're so desperate for leadership in this country that as soon as people saw someone standing up to Becky Cele, they were like, oh, we need to make this guy president, which... I mean, we don't know the first thing about him except that he stands up to an asshole like Becky Cele, and we're like, oh, we got to have him for prez. I don't know about that. I think that's that's maybe a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from South Africans who feel rudderless and leaderless at the moment. But we'll see what he has to say for himself, and whether or not he has any designs on the world of politics. He certainly is a community policing guy. And he's got an interesting background too. So we'll find out. We'll talk to him a little bit, see what he's all about. And speaking of people who are coming up, I'm also pleased to say that I spent, it was probably maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. That's all we could squeeze in with a brilliant man called Dr. Alan Mendoza. He's the head and the founder of a think tank in London called the Henry Jackson Society. He explains where the Henry Jackson Society gets its name. He also talks a little bit about what they do, but we mostly spent that 45 minutes to an hour talking about all kinds of politics and global issues and current affairs and stuff that we think might be interesting to you. So we touch on Russia and the Ukraine. We touch on American politics. We touch, obviously, on the issue of Boris Johnson, because when I recorded this, which was on Thursday last week, it was all happening at that moment. Boris hadn't yet resigned. He hadn't made the announcement. So this was all going on at the moment that we were talking. So Alan Mendoza, that'll come up at about 8 o'clock this morning. You can just refresh your feed and you will find it right there and then. And I'm looking at doing a whole slew of really interesting interviews in the next while. I think it might be time to just change things up a little. So we'll let you know how that's going to, just in terms of the show, so we can start doing things a little bit differently. Now we've also got Bakabantu who'll be joining us in a little while. He unfortunately is in load shedding, and I have a sneaky suspicion Phumi is too, but we'll find out now. We're going to connect to her in the studio. My power's just gone off, Phum. So have you got power now? You've got power now?
I've got power here at the studio, and I
Shit.
had to get
I'm
dressed
sorry
in
you
the
had to
dark,
run out.
guys. It's quite hectic.
So do you even know when yours went off? It must be around 4 a.m. or something.
4 a.m. Yes, it went off around 4 a.m. And here we are.
No, well, thank you for coming in. I know what a ball ache it can be to have. I mean, mine's just gone off. So it looks like we're at opposite ends of the load shedding shit stream for this week.
and
the same thing
so
happened
this
yesterday.
week this week we're in a bad one, right? Because it goes off at night, and I went to bed in the dark, me and Heidi. Did you see Heidi on Twitter yesterday talking about going to bed in the dark and waking up in the dark, and then Derek Hanekom tweeting her? Derek Hanekom
No, what was that all about?
tweeting.
No, tell me.
Oh my gosh, Derek Hanekom tweeted her something. Giancos, is that how you say her surname?
Heidi from? Yeah, she's the ENCA journalist, right? Heidi Giancos.
Yes.
Yeah,
Giancos. She is the ENCA. And then Derek Hanekom, all uppity, tweets her back.
Yeah.
The government, because the government doesn't care, not care. Me. And then
Well, they don't.
Kaya Sitole,
yeah, what did
who
Kaya
we've
say?
had on the show before, who we've had on the show before, tweeted a smackdown that says, "Oh, Derek, you're so right. Heidi's assertion that the government thinks is wildly off the mark."
Nice. All right, we got to get Kaya back on. You just made me think how much I miss him. All right. So Pums, we got a couple of things in your
gallivanting
agenda.
all over the world, guy. He's gallivanting all over the world because he's relocated to the UK, which we hate. But are happy for him. But also that means he gets to do the things he loves doing, like being at Wimbledon.
And because of the time difference, that will mean he's probably still available to talk to us every now and then. So we'll chase him down.
Yeah. I'm
sure he can make time. All right, here's from the wonderful world of the Eastern Cape. Here is Bakabantu. Hello, sir. How are you?
I don't know what you mean by wonderful.
What, you mean Makanda hasn't improved overnight? You guys didn't elect a new mayor and now everything's fine?
Oh, Gareth, I wish we improved. I wish we could find the fortitude to improve, guys. The Eastern Cape is continuing to be trash. I am continuing to see flames, literally and figuratively. They were stoning people in because there's no water in Nelson Mandela Bay. So the news was just all about they were residents were stoning cars on the highway in Port Elizabeth. I'm like, what are random cars have to do with you guys not having water? But hey, that's how we deal with problems in South Africa.
Well, it's amazing. That's such an infantile response. It's like tantruming, right? It's like, oh, I don't have water, electricity, throw rocks at random people as they go past. It really shows you the kind of level that some people are at in terms of how much frustration there is. I do think it's interesting to note that the mayor of PE was out in traffic yesterday. They made a big story of this on the TV news. They're like, the mayor of PE, I saw a clip on, I think it was an Instagram. She was out on the streets and she was like trying to get people in cars. It was called water awareness. She's trying to get people to use less water. And I didn't know that the mayor of PE was even a she. But no, most people were just ignoring her. They didn't know who she was, and they were driving past her. Like, I'm talking taxis, buckies, cars, vans. They were all just driving past, and then she was wearing this stupid, like a sandwich board thing saying water awareness. You should use less.
She was wearing
I
the
don't know, 10.
sandwich board and not the mayoral bling.
No, the sandwich board. But
Well,
I
she's not
mean,
wearing the high visibility jacket.
oh no, she had a high visibility jacket on. You know, it's almost like every politician gets one of those now, just in case they find themselves in a tough situation, which increasingly they will do. But it was funny to watch because they were trying to obviously get footage of her talking to people, but most people wouldn't even wind down their window for her.
Oh. Listen, the things we see on TV, I saw last night I got to watch a little bit of Summer of Soul. Y'all heard about that?
No,
It is.
No, we haven't. I'm not.
Oh, Summer of Soul is a documentary. About about the Harlem Cultural Festival, which was held in the summer of 1969, and it's a documentary that was produced by Questlove from The Roots.
Mm-hmm.
He found this footage. So it was like a 6-week festival. Every weekend, every Saturday, I think they had huge concerts in Harlem in the same summer that, as we all know, on the other side of the world was now I've forgotten the rock festival that everybody knows about from 1969.
Oh, Woodstock.
Woodstock. Right.
and Woodstock.
And they shot this festival. There were 300,000 people that came to the festival over those 6 weekends, and it was filmed, and the footage sat in a basement for 50 years until Questlove found it. The footage is magnificent.
Very exciting.
The footage is magnificent. It's like, and what I saw for the first time
performing that we would have known.
Stevie Wonder playing drums. That's what I saw
Stevie Wonder
yesterday.
playing drums. Oh wow!
What? I've seen him play the piano. I've seen him play the harmonica. But did you know that Stevie Wonder could play the drums?
I didn't know.
I gotta see that.
Stevie Wonder is a talent, guys.
Everybody was at this festival. And they had like every black artist you can think of came to play. I saw BB King. I saw a performance by BB King yesterday. He is very slender in that video in 1969.
By the way, I mean, this stuff, I wonder how much other stuff they will discover in the future that's just been locked in. I love the idea that this stuff was hidden away in a storeroom or a basement, and then someone had the initiative to go looking for it and dig it out. Thank God, right? I mean, isn't that awesome?
So what's really funny about it is Questlove talks about, because Quest's dad was in a band. That's how Quest got into music. His dad was in a band, in a touring band. And so Quest was always around musicians and music and performers. And he says he talked about this festival and nobody seemed to know about it. People couldn't, he's like, I've seen it. I've seen footage. It was on TV. And everybody was just like, yeah, I don't know. I think you made this shit up, yo. And that's how he went looking for the footage and found it.
Damn. I think that's so cool and so exciting.
It is really, it's incredible footage, and it looks really nice. I only saw 20 minutes of the documentary. Summer of Soul.
Summer of Soul. Got it. Made a note.
Where did you watch this? Is for me.
So Pums.
It's a Hulu documentary.
So it's on Hulu. Oh, okay, I thought it was Netflix. So I'll have to, you have to have all these services, or else you have to be willing to pirate the stuff. That's the two options. And I think you can work out which one I'm going to do. I don't have no Hulu subscription, everybody. So that's going to be fun. Don't tell them, all right?
You could be someone's tenant. You could be someone's Hulu tenant.
Hey, speaking of tenants, I need to ask you about this. So I have this flat in Sandton, which I've been renting out. And the tenant's great. And she pays on time and everything's good. But But then I was going through the accounts on Tuesday, and I realized that there are 2 months that were outstanding somewhere in the middle of last year, and there are about 8 electricity bills that she hasn't paid that I've because it's a debit order off my account. So I've subsidized her electricity for a couple of months now. So I'm asking myself how I should approach this. Do I just send her an email? Should I be worried about this? Should I be prepared for some kind of a pushback from her? What is the situation there? Do you just say, hey, listen, I was going through the accounts and these months are outstanding? Because so far she's been very good about things like that when there has been an error or she's forgotten a month or whatever. And I'm kind of forgiving. I'm not one of those nasty people who's like, oh, well, I'm going to throw you out in your ass. I always go, oh, well, can we sort this out? And she's been very good about it. What do you think I should do?
Ring, ring. Hi, it's
Ready?
Gareth. Yeah. Don't
Not
be
email?
awkward about it. Don't be awkward about it. Just phone her up and say, and then you can follow up with an email.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, if I'm bad and I pirate this Hulu documentary, then do I really have any right to point fingers? And you said I'm not a Hulu tenant, I was like, oh God, my tenant. I just a bit of hypocrisy coming in here. So like, I should pay if I expect other people to pay. So I don't know. In Dogoza says email and then call to discuss. Okay, well, that's I mean, Pumi's right. Obviously, you're right. I don't know. Matthew says,
Didn't pay for a year.
Didn't pay for a year, and I have a 14K bill and just left the place. Was tempted to sell his furniture. Well, I mean,
what do you mean just left the place? What does that mean?
Just left. The tenant,
but what does that mean? Without their furniture? What if something happened to the tenant? What if they were hurt somewhere?
What if they're dead? They died in a ditch.
What if they died of COVID on their way?
So Steve says many a Pornhub movie has this exact same storyline. See, Mariska is the kind of person who she says you need to go the proper legal route right from the start. I don't know about that.
Mariska, that escalated very quickly.
David Sachs says, phone call first, otherwise you'll send an email and you can't get hold of them to explain it. Otherwise, just email. Well, okay, email or call. I'm going to try them. I'll try the email first. If that doesn't work, then I'll call. But I'm pretty sure, we can figure this out. People need a place to live. People need to know what's going on. They need to know what the rules are. So I'm going to just a gentle reminders where I'll
start. You need to kick her out, and there's a young man from the Eastern Cape who's looking for a place in Sandton to stay in. Kick her out.
All right. Have you got some money to pay the rent? Because I'll give you that place for the... You got some money for rent? It's not huge.
Well, it seems like no one pays at this place.
Oh, so you just wanted
people didn't pay at this place. You were subsidizing electricity.
You want me to pay your electricity and give you free rent? Oh, okay. No, Bakavantu. I think I'm better off with my current tenant. Thank you. Unbelievable. Oh, man. And people do ignore email. That's a good point John makes. But I have found she's pretty good about this. She actually works in an auditing firm. And she's a very fastidious person. But obviously not as fastidious as
auditors are wont to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly, I don't know if I want her as my auditor because she kind of forgets electricity bills, which is kind of important, especially when all of this on our mind at the moment is electricity. But we'll see. I just don't want to be a landlord anymore. Frankly, I'd rather sell this place. I mean, who wants to be a landlord?
You've had it for a long time, hey?
I know, Pums. I lived in it for, 4 or 5 years? And then I built and bought this place. And I just, everybody said in those days, buy a property. It's a great investment. I just don't like the idea that if anything goes wrong, the oven breaks or the geyser bursts or something, then I have to sort that out. And I don't feel like I'm charging enough rent because I don't feel that there's that much wiggle room in the market at the moment to charge that much rent. So I feel it's just it's basically covering costs at this stage. So I think it's time to get rid of it. Yeah.
So I think owning property, as I've grown older, I think it's one of those things that we've been lied to about. Like
Yep.
owning property,
Totally agree.
it's just
Yeah.
it's so much drama. It's so much work. It's so much like stuff. You've got to like the garden. You've got to get the garden
if
done.
I could
You've got
go
to
back,
clean the gutters.
how old are you now?
25, sir.
All right, so he's 25. So if I could go back to 25, couple of things I'd do. First thing I would do, only buy the property that you live in. And only buy one that you feel you're going to live in for a long time, or that you're going to add value to. You're gonna make alterations, you're gonna do a little maintenance, you might change some things, but only pay for that property and do not buy other property. Number one. Number two, I would say I would have put away more money, but not into policies, into savings, and then later on investments. Because obviously 25 years ago we were headed for sunny days in terms of investments. This is really the first recession in living memory for many people in the world, the first major recession. And I think a lot of people would have thought in those days, oh, it's going to get better and better and better, because it did. It kind of improved year on year and year. And I would not have wasted money on like the dumb stuff. Like I wouldn't have bought so many clothes and things, because I feel those were the biggest pitfalls in my financial past. Speaking to Joe Semino this week, it just reminded me of like, we get taken by these insurance companies. You need life cover, you need this kind of cover, you need this policy, retirement, this. I don't know. All of those things I've put money into. You can't touch them until you're very old. And they seem to me to not have been...
And the return's not that great.
It's pathetic. Yep. There's no return
the
on them.
return's not great.
So we've been lied to about property, Phumi. We've been lied to about these policies. It's bullshit, right?
So if I
what
went
would you
back,
have done if you could do it again?
I would travel more. I'd spend all my money traveling. I really would. I would travel more. I would see more of the world. And I would do more of that kind of stuff. I think the education, like the life learning that I got from traveling and being out, I would probably want to work in different places as well. That's
a good one.
I
like that.
That's definitely wouldn't have saved my money on policies and shit. I'm not even sure if I would have bought a place. I think I would have probably rented a smaller place for longer, because you're not living. I don't think that we're that way. So back in the 60s, 70s and 80s, people stayed in one place for a long time. But now we travel more. We travel more and move around more often. And I think I wouldn't want to be shackled to that.
And unless you are unless you're a crazy spender, like having liquid capital is the best thing to have, right? The hard cash is what you want. So Bakabantu, obviously you're 25. You haven't thought about any
like
of
if
this
I
shit,
was
or maybe
25.
Yeah.
If I was 25, I'd also do the same things you guys do.
I mean, do you have a plan for like where you want to put money once you save up some, or whether or not you want to do this, or whether you'd like to buy property, or do you have any kind of strategy? Because I definitely didn't at 25. I wish I had.
So I've always seen like owning a house like you were describing. I don't know, maybe you raised old school like that. I've always seen owning a house, step one. Yeah, and then after that was just have roots somewhere and then see the world.
Yeah, Steve E says, being in my house for 23 years, it's nearly paid for. 23 years. Yeah. I hear that. I mean, listen.
Isn't the standard like 20 years for a bond? Wasn't that on the... Yeah, wasn't that the advertisement for a bond? 20 years.
If I didn't have my bond in the first few years of Cliff Central, I wouldn't have been able to buy groceries. I was borrowing against that for at least 2, maybe 3 years of starting the business. So I mean, I'm still paying it off. I've made very little progress, very little. In fact, I've gone backwards, you could say, from where I was maybe 9, 10 years ago. Anyway, I mean, it's we can all look back, if only, right? But
Hmm.
sometimes,
So Donna,
sometimes you only get wise like later on. So that's part of the whole reason that you are 25
Hindsight
is
is
that you.
2020.
yes,
I know,
with every
I know.
passing birthday. But I see Donna says y'all are still young enough to do all that, and I agree with you. Now I do. Now I as much as I can, I will get on a plane and go somewhere and just
No,
do
it's never too late.
see new places. Yeah, but
It's
it's
never too late.
when you're older,
And
it's
you
just a
see
little bit more sucky.
you see people in their 60s and 70s, like they're embracing the things that they should have done maybe earlier. But yeah, and everything in its time.
Yeah,
And you
yeah, yeah.
can't regret stuff like that. You can't get upset about things like that. You just got to make
No,
your way.
so definitely not a regret. Just
Yeah,
what are we doing differently in the next 20 years?
right. People are saying renovations on rentals are so costly. Be wise and repurpose where you can. Well, I am a big fan. Yeah, I'm a big fan of recycling, repurposing, changing stuff around that you already have instead of buying new stuff. I think that's the way to go. Can we just talk about something? It's already half past. We've got to get to some headlines. A couple of things in the
You
headlines that are worth reflection. There's a lot going on. Let's start off with this. Government says they're going to create 2 million jobs before the election. Um,
Gareth,
Oh,
Gareth,
love that
Gareth.
vigor.
G- Start with who in government? When was the
all
last
right,
time
let me
you heard
start.
that name, Tulas Nxesi? When was the last time? Did
Tulas,
you even
the
remember
the
that the
labor
man is a
minister.
minister? Did you even
Well, he
remember
was
that
the
the man
guy.
is a minister?
Tulas Nxesi is the guy who taught us about the fire pool. Remember? He's the one.
Eh.
Ehe. He is now our labor minister, and he says government wants to add 2 million jobs before the next election. That's according to Bloomberg News. And we're all painfully aware that South Africa has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, over 35%. The number rises to over 45% if you include people who've given up on finding work. That
Mm,
means
mm.
that the government has until 2024 to achieve what would seem like a miraculous feat. Whether or not that's achievable, I don't know. Yes.
So
these guys, these guys
look,
set the trap and then they walk straight into it, right? He goes, whether or not that's possible, I don't know. He said during an interview in Johannesburg. If government does in fact have a strategy to achieve this aim, it appears to involve reducing the number of undocumented immigrants in the country. Oh, that's what they're going to do. Go after the weakest and the people at the bottom of the scale. Yeah, punish them. That's a great way to start. You want jobs? I know what we'll do. We'll chase the Somalians and the Zimbabweans out. We'll force them to leave. That'll suddenly create employment for a whole lot of other people, which it won't. It's
hmm,
unbelievable. There's been a trend of employment of foreign workers at the expense of South African workers, Messi told Bloomberg. This is such dangerous rhetoric. This is the kind of shit that you
Rhetoric,
heard the
yeah.
Nazis. Don't you remember the Nazis, World War II? I know it was a long time ago and many people didn't live through it, but have you picked up a single history book where you're othering people? We were talking about this yesterday with Celeste and Tuli. And, you know, the moment we start saying those people over there shouldn't or
It's
mustn't
their
or
fault.
government should or it's their fault, you're going down a dangerous path. Anyway, this is from our Minister of
Especially
Labor.
if it's government endorsed.
Yes. I mean,
and
but that's what it is.
it's so you remember when a couple of it's maybe 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, when the
Mhm.
whole sorry, Tantalaks and Dudula phenomenon was gaining momentum and steam. We got some
Yes.
comments in in the gallery here about because I still still believe it's a terribly slippery slope. And when Tlatla started out riling people up
Hmm.
about foreign nationals
Hmm.
and what they mean and the danger and the township and the and this past
Yes.
Sunday after the shooting in the tavern in Orlando East. I've seen some videos of people complaining about, oh, wow, Tsonga speaking people and Venda speaking people and
I saw that
Xhosa
as well.
speaking
Yeah.
people.
Now suddenly we're tribal.
Told y'all, first it starts with the foreigners and then it.
And as a lot smarter people than me have often said, it's fine when the economy is growing and there's opportunity for people and people haven't given up hope. But the moment they're hopeless and they're stoning cars in PE or whatever because they don't have water and electricity, and the government is mismanaging things to the point where you can see they've thrown their hands up in the air now. I mean, this whole. I was talking to Martin Hood, the gun lawyer. You know, we did that gun cast a couple of years ago to help people who own guns to know what the rules are. And Martin is the foremost gun lawyer in the country. He's the one who took the application to the court to have them declare that and the police eventually admitted they can't do anything anymore. They're admitting the whole situation is beyond their control. So if you own a gun and you've handed it in at the police station and you're expecting your license to be reissued, it's not going to happen. Just take your gun home and keep it at home, and your license will take an extra 2-3 years, which means you could be unlicensed should you have to use your gun. And we'll figure that out when we get there, is basically the answer. But it just shows you the police have given up there. They've given up with electricity. There's nothing they can do here. We've spoken about Andre de Ruyter and Eskom until we're blue in the face. But the fact is, they don't know how to get out of this. And here's Tulas Nxesi, who's blaming the foreigners because he's run out of other excuses. Now, I saw in the comments, and I thought this was kind of funny. Phumi, you can back this up if it's true. But someone whose name is Tulas, right, which is shut up or keep quiet, and Nxesi, which is sorry.
Sorry.
His name is too much. Says yonder. Is that right?
Nxesi is the sorry. So sort of.
Sanele says
close enough.
The CR17 campaign promised 500 jobs for the youth. Can they deliver those first before dreaming about 150% more? I forgot about that. But the CR, you remember all that euphoria around Cyril, the CR17 campaign? Remember that bullshit?
Ramaphoria.
Ramaphoria, yes. There are still some people who are doing that, by the way. Still some people in the media who are doing that shit. They love it.
Oh, but his fans are jumping ship. His fans are jumping ship. Oh, 2 weeks in a row now, Peter Bruce. 2 weeks in a row now, Peter Bruce has been scathing about young Cyril.
No, the problem is no one's reading Peter Bruce except you. The rest of us. I remember criticizing Peter Bruce for his Ramaphoria at the start of lockdown, and I remember he made some snide remark about what does Gareth Cliff know or whatever. And I would like an apology now. I think I'm going to go around asking people. I'm going to go around with a little notepad with all the people who said at the beginning of lockdown, you shut up. What do you know? And I'm going to pass around a couple of notes that are already written out. All they have to do is sign them. Dear Gareth, I'm so sorry. I was wrong and you were right. Here with my apology. And I will run around in a sundress for the rest of this month. And you can spank me with a paddle for being a fucking moron. I'd like, just sign that for me, Peter Bruce. That would be great. Oh, Adrian Basson. And all the other people, and the people who called me an anti-vax, even though I'd had 2 shots, I'd like to have those people apologize at the same time. So all of you, line up. Let's put you in a little sundress and spank you. That's right.
I saw somebody, one of the ministers. It would also seem that the price for defaming these politicians has gone up. You remember Trevor Manuel set it at 50,000 rand, and this Julius had and the EFF had to pay.
Yes.
But I saw somebody being sued for 200,000 rands for for crime injuria. I'm gonna look for it just now. I was just like, Gareth, you could.
I'd love to. I'd like an extra 200,000 rand. Let me look into that, Phumi. That's a good idea. By the way, while we're talking about getting money for nothing, and we've only really done one headline this morning, but Bagabantu, you know how much you've been looking into how much kings, queens, and traditional leaders get paid in South Africa. Listen to this, everybody. You're shitting your pants.
I wish
what are the
I
numbers?
was royal, Gareth.
Yeah. And by the way, these are people who were just born into these families.
To be a
and these
king
are people
in
who
South Africa.
they're not doing anything at all to improve the country. We're just giving them free money. So who's on this payroll and how much do they get?
Exactly, because these people aren't even council, because there's still councillors, there's still city managers, there's still mayors. We have so many like people that we employ in this country, and we're just paying these people to just be happy and live their best lives, these kings and queens.
Right.
So to be a king in South Africa or a queen, you get annually 1.2 mil in your bank account.
Ka-ching.
1.2 mil
nice.
for free. Ka-ching. I saw a video of the Xhosa king dancing on Twitter or something like that, and people were posting it on TikTok and whatnot, saying this guy is so happy. Yeah, I would also be happy getting 1.2 mil a year just for being me.
By the way, let's not forget the last Xhosa king, Dalin Diebo. You remember him? He went to jail.
Yeah. This is Dalin.
This is the same one.
He got a pardon from Cyril. Yeah, he got a pardon from Cyril.
It's the same idiot. Because this guy he's a moron.
Yeah,
didn't he hit a woman, he stole money, he's always high on weed. This is the guy we're paying for? We're paying for this derelict? It's like Hunter Biden.
Yeah, we are paying for this guy to live his best life. This guy ordered killings. He ordered killings. That's why he went to prison, because as a king, he said, let's go kill those people who had I think they stole cattle.
Right.
Or something, and then he got put in prison for that, because that's inciting violence. He's always high.
Yeah,
there's also that.
So okay, those kings. So the kings get well over $1 million. That's nice. An extra $1 million a year would be great, wouldn't it? Just to be called king, and you get called king.
And then at the lower end of the spectrum, Gareth.
Yeah, people get to bow and scrape. This is great. So what about other traditional leaders, like the ones who are lower down the rank? Do they also get some free money?
Yeah, I don't know what a head woman or a head man is, but they also get money. Apparently, we also pay for those. There's a senior traditional leader. There's a full-time member of the PHLT. I don't know what these are, but we are paying for these, and they get 120K a year. That's like what, 10,000 a month, just for existing.
Nice. That's good money, just for being there.
Provincial,
and it's been increasing
of traditional leaders.
Right.
You know how stuff has not been increasing, how only payments have been increasing? Their salaries have also been increasing over the years.
Of course. Yes, that's right. And Dogoza says, isn't that your king, Bakabantu? Yes, exactly. Show some respect, Bakabantu.
No, he is my king. I recognize that man as my king. Also, I think I'm directly related to him, because when you break up the Xhosa tribe, he's the king of Abatembu, and then I'm also Mtembu. So he's directly my king, and I don't like the man. Yeah, so all the Mandelas, there's a story there. Apparently they stole the crown somewhere. There's a story. There's a shady story. There's always stories around Nelson Mandela. They stole the crown somewhere.
Right. I don't know. So these people are being paid for. There's some more news you didn't necessarily want to hear this morning. But how's this? According to the Sowetan, the Home Affairs Department is granting retirement visas to people who are younger than 25. Yes. If you're a 25-year-old adult looking to retire, then South Africa is the place for you, but only if you're a foreigner. This is one of the anomalies that's been revealed by a task team into the issue of permits regarding foreign nationals since 2004. The task team set up by the department has found that adults as young as 25 were irregularly granted retirement visas to enter the country. So, according to these people, there is widespread corruption with the issuing of permits and the names of 12 officials that have been handed over to the Hawks for investigation. And then, of course, when it gets to NPA, it'll just grind to a halt, as it always does. He said officials in the department were granting these retirement permits to people who were 20, 25 years old. We detected a spike of retirement visas in 2018. They involved Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India, mostly nationals from those countries. 79% of applicants applied for retirement before the age of 55, and 65% of them were approved. Applicants younger than 25 had retired person visas approved, which is rather strange, says the department. You don't say. So basically, you want to come to South Africa, the best way in is to pretend that you're retiring, even though you're 25. How does that grab you? You like that story?
So, you know what I know we talk about like what used to be mainstream media on the show often and about you know what really irks me about
What?
all of these stories it is it shows two things, right? It's showing the politicians picking up on this populist rhetoric that's happening out there, right? This anti foreign
Anti.
national, this
Yeah,
the politicians are obviously all picking up on it and wanting to score cheap points, and so they're also going after that, right? So now suddenly there's a task team at the Department of Home Affairs that's
right.
looking at the
Yes.
corruption and right. Why is it a
Mhm.
task team? Why is it not police? Why are the police not doing their job? Why are the hawks not doing their job? These people that are being handed over,
Yeah.
but there's also in the media too, right? Is the way all of this reporting is also because it's the popular topic, everybody's talking about
Right.
it, so we feed it we feed the fire with air, we feed the fire with air, so now everybody's reporting about it. It's kind of like the tavern killings. I was wondering if the tavern killings that were reported after this weekend would have been reported on had it not been for Enyobeni a week and a half ago,
Mhm.
right? Would we be
Probably
watching
not.
what's happening at taverns? Would we?
No, probably not.
Would we care?
Well, I
Which,
do. We I think we do care, Bakabantu, but the average person's attention span is so short now
mm,
that we just don't stay on a story for long enough. Again, I'm still upset about things like Marikana and Life Estimeni. I brought it up the other day. I don't think anybody else really thinks about Life Estimeni very much anymore. I don't think
what
anything's going to
is
happen. No one's been sent to jail. These are things that are now that have been investigated. That actually we forced people to come and account for themselves in front of Judge Dikgang Mozaneke. Remember,
and then what? And then what?
zero, nothing. But I'm
I
excited
actually had
about one news
a
story.
an uncle who was
Can I just
directly
bring?
affected by life testimony.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Tell us more.
it's an interesting story. Yo, like to keep it short. This guy was lost in the 80s. Presumed dead, buried at home. Everything was
Hmm?
done, and then uh, a new
Wait,
nurse or a nurse just he started speaking just before the life testimony tragedy. Before they started moving the patients, so he started speaking, but like this nurse who has been there for 10 years hasn't heard this man speak. He's always been one of those schizophrenias that was being quiet and whatnot. So now he starts speaking and starts like speaking in coherent sentences, talking about where is his home. And then this lady calls a friend who's a teacher. This teacher randomly tells the story in class. One of the people in class was my cousin listening, goes and randomly tells the story to their mom, and then the mom picks up, oh no man, these names sound familiar, these are the names of my cousins, and then calls
Huh.
the teacher, gets the nurse to illegally take a picture of this patient because they're not allowed to take pictures of this patient, takes it to the
Yeah.
guy's mom who was still alive luckily, and the mom was like, she's like a grandmother now, she was like, that's my son, let's go pick him up. A week later, they do the whole home affairs thing. They undo his death and whatnot. And then I think about a month he was back home,
so you
just before all of that life is many stuff happened.
wait, so there was a symbolic funeral? Did you also
There
have a
was a symbolic
symbolic
funeral.
funeral?
Yeah, no, I wasn't there because this happened in the 80s before I was born, but they had a symbolic funeral. So we had a symbolic unfuneraling when we dug up a hole and we actually found like because they didn't put in a box because there was no body, but we buried like this
Right.
traditional blanket that we bury all our dead in. It's like a white blanket with a black stripe. So like we dug that up, and then we left the hole vacant. So he passed away. Like this was like so he passed away last year, I think. Yeah, he passed away last year. Then we just buried him in his old hole. But the weirdest thing also
In
happened.
his
So
old
he
hole.
passed away last year beginning,
Bakabantu.
and then so at the beginning of the year last year he passed away, and then December last year we had a symbolic taking to the mountain, because he never went to the mountain because he got lost before he went to the mountain. So we also had a symbolic umtiti, and it was like, yeah, it was very like,
Jesus.
I was laughing about it like into the family group, but we had like a symbolic
Sounds kind of
thing
ridiculous.
where we're taking
Yeah.
this dead guy. We're taking this
Yeah.
dead guy to the mountain and bring him back the next day. So I mean,
Right.
so that we can do his rightful stuff and then he can be accepted in the ancestors. And it was a Joel, but yeah, it was weird. So I'm
Wow.
that rural.
Wow,
system.
what a story.
So the symbolic.
So
no,
you
but
involved.
I think that it's important to understand that the symbolic funeral is an Eastern Cape thing, then, huh?
Yeah, no, the symbolic funeral is the Eastern Cape thing. If you're lost, I think
Manje,
they
why?
speak to the
Manje, why
ancestors,
would
try to
they?
find you.
Why is Cyril getting all
They
this
try to-
backlash for attending a symbolic funeral?
I don't know, but
I'm
I know
just
we
trying
did
to
it.
connect the dots. I'm trying to connect the dots, Buffett.
No. So everyone just hates Cyril at the moment. They just hate
Yeah.
him.
Let me just tell you a story that'll make you feel happier, right? This. I like this. The South African Revenue Service announced on Tuesday its operations have been affected by industrial action from unions, forcing the tax body to close 18 branches in 7 provinces across the country. It comes at a sensitive time for SARS operations as tax season started at the beginning of July. SARS has floated the idea of channeling its savings from 2021 towards wages. Unions said this would only add up to a 1.39% increase and rejected the offer. But the tax agency says it cannot budget more than 70 million for baseline increases. I want the workers at SARS to be unhappy. I want them to completely fall apart like every other department, and then we can stop paying taxes. I would love this. I mean, we're already, they take our money already, and they abuse and misdirect and steal and fraudulently reappropriate stuff that isn't theirs. SARS owes me money. They've owed me money for the last year and a half. I want them to collapse like every other government department. It's only right that they collapse as well. So I think this is a good news story. May SARS start to crumble and fall apart and disintegrate completely. I think this is something worth celebrating. Who else is going to join me as we die in the street to celebrate SARS falling apart? Come on, let's do this.
Stink mean as it is.
No, he says, thank you. Nobody wants to pay taxes. Yes, exactly. And as G-Star points out, this is Tom Moyane's shit show from all those years ago. SARS has been destroyed by the ANC. Yeah, but it was all part of a plan. You know, they had to capture SARS so they could get their hands on the revenue straight away. It was like fresh from the oven before it even went to finance, just straight out of there. And Stevie agrees. He says, yes, SARS must be hacked. It's so great. So there is good news, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hope SARS continue to fall apart. That would be great news. I think everybody's excited about that. Can we just very briefly, because nobody really knew any updates last night about the whole Senzo Miua trial. I know Advocate Tefo has stepped aside. He doesn't want to represent the accused anymore. Now he's busy.
No, he wants to represent the accused, but
he says he can't.
His life has been threatened. And,
yes, and he says Cyril. He says Cyril's part of that, hey?
He didn't say Cyril. Guys, he didn't say Cyril. Y'all just what? He didn't say Cyril. He said from the office of the from the number one office. From the number one office. For all we know, it could be Kusela Diko. But
this is why SARS has to fall apart. We have to stop supporting these morons.
She's not there anymore. It's not Kusela. She's not there anymore.
I know, shame,
but it
because
could be
she was
anyone.
also involved. She was involved in so much of the PPE scandal, the tender scandal, that
it could
she
be
and her
anyone,
husband have
including
gone to
Cyril.
It could be anyone.
could
It could be
Cyril.
anyone.
Including
I'm
Cyril.
just saying. It could be the minister. It could be the minister. It could be Mondli. Is it Mondli Gungubele? It could be Mondli Gungubele. It could be anyone.
Oh my God. This case, as Jean says, he's turned it into a soap opera. Yeah, but you know what?
Listen, Tifo did not
I hate
turn
to
it
break
into a soap opera. It was
South
a soap
Africa
opera
is a
at
soap
the
opera.
beginning.
Yes, Phumi, correct. But I hate to break it to everybody. South Africa is a big soap opera. And we're not even well produced. We're like the old generations. Do you remember? That's what we are. And it's like we've got shitty actors and shitty actresses. And it's like people coming back from the dead. And
Listen
Shamida
here,
Batoy,
Gareth,
who's always been dead,
Gareth,
but she's pretending to be alive.
Gareth, don't talk shit about old generations. Do not talk shit about old generations. That was primetime TV.
Oh, I love that show.
Primetime
You can
TV with like we've had some stellar actresses and actors go through that show in those.
There you go. Listen. No, you're right. I can't say that I hate the old generations. It was actually one of my favorite things. I used to get back from school and then that would be on, and I would rather than do my homework, I just watch this mindless stuff, and it was fun. It was important. All right, so at this rate, the Senzo's family will never get justice. Delays after it. Well, I mean, you may say, Stink Mina, why did it even take this long for it to be investigated? Why has it taken years and years and years for this to even get to court? G Star says low IQ leaders. Gareth, please respect OG generations when 8 p.m. was 8 p.m. Yeah, that's a good point. And we had
Prime
electricity
time.
at 8 p.m.
Prime
we had
time.
electricity. Those are the good old days. Listen, I saw a trade unionist on TV. You must know things are bad when a trade unionist goes on TV and says, it was better under apartheid. Because, that's like the ultimate
Who's
insult.
that?
Ibrahim something or another. He's a old Kasatu guy. He was there at the beginning of Kasatu. I used to have him on the ENCA show. He, in this country, when people say that, it's like the worst insult, right? That's the most awful thing you can say, is that it was better under apartheid. That's like what you say before you leave the house and burn it down. And this guy was saying that because he said, electricity. At least we had electricity. I just thought, oh my God, dude, you are picking the lowest hanging fruit if you've only figured that out now.
Yeah. I've speechless.
Oh, well, what are we going to do?
Speechless.
Sanele says that's some serious sax on the old generation's theme song. Oh, yes.
Yes.
That was a great song. Ethan even says, great song. Getting home to watch TV after school. I've always been jealous of these children. TV's a luxury. Most children see it as a need. Shut up, Ethan. Stop moaning about how poor you were when you were young. We can all do that. It was important to not do homework. If I weren't watching TV, I would have been playing in the garden. So it's not about money. I would have been running around. I would have been doing something else. But I did not like my homework. Yeah. Nice, Gareth. Are you having an espresso? Fancy. No, I'm just having a plain black coffee. But
You know what? I'm not having.
Oh, shame, Pums, because there isn't any here. There is some.
I'm just
there is some coffee. There's some coffee in the cupboard where Rena sits. Go and help yourself to that, Pums. You have my permission.
There's a stash, people. There's a stash.
There's a stash, but only for special people like you, Pumi. The rest must drink that shit that Jane serves. Are you gonna be in this morning? Because I'll be there at about 9:15. Are you still gonna be there?
I would have stayed, but this morning as I left the house, I got an SMS from Young Kanejo saying he's really not feeling well. We've been having a WhatsApp back and forth for 2.5 days. He's not feeling well, and I think it's just man flu. I think it's little man flu.
You got to look after him.
So now I have to go fetch him and take him to a doctor. But
Jean
and Gary don't give anymore.
I want you to know that there's coffee for you there as well, because that's what we keep.
There's what?
We keep it.
There's
Recoffee.
what? What?
It's that stuff that it comes in a big tin, this big.
And what is it? It just colors your water. It colors your warm water black.
Well, Ben used to call it a cup of brown. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, it's already 7:00. We got to take a break because
that there's ghetto snob in me, y'all. Gotta recognize
I know
there's ghetto snob in
that's
me.
Why,
That's
why
not
people
coffee.
That's what people are saying to you here, that they think you should try the recoffee. That's what people are telling me. All right, so coming up, we have got the Burning Platform. We're going to be joined by Kanthan Pillay, Ian Cameron, Phumi Mashiko. All of that's coming to you in the next hour. Plus, I do have to remind you, Dr. Alan Mendoza, the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, which is a British-based think tank. He speaks to me, and
bless you.
Yo. He speaks to me at 8:00 this morning. Well, we recorded it last Thursday, but that goes live at 8:00 this morning. You don't want to miss it. All of that and more on the way. Stick around. The Burning Platform is next.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
So something that's quite topical right now is load shedding. So I want to know, with regards to load shedding, you're an EV driver. So I wanted to find out basically how load shedding has impacted your driving experience. And I think the first thing I want to know is, has there, even been an impact on your driving experience as a result?
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
You better believe there's been an impact on my driving experience in terms of load shedding. It means that the traffic lights are out, and then you jump up and down and you try to figure out your way past a traffic light where everybody's crawling because of load shedding. Yes, it's impacting every single part of our lives, but we're not going to start talking about that. I'm sitting here in the dark, but luckily I've got a little power supply to keep the studio going. Kanthan warned us about this years ago. He already said, you got to get off the grid. You got to sort yourself out. I'm going to let him have his I told you so moment in just a short while, because we haven't caught up with Kanthan for a while. Of course, the Burning Platform every single week on a Thursday at 7 o'clock. Here is Phumi Mashiko. It's always good to have Phumi on. And here is the return. Kanthan Pillay. Hello, Kanthan.
Without his hair.
Morning, guys.
What's happened? You went for the you got rid of all that silver lustrous
ponytail.
Guys, it was for a good cause. I've donated it to cancer, and they're going to turn it into a wig for when people go through chemotherapy, they end up losing their hair, and with just the trauma of fighting off cancer, it ends up being quite stressful for them, to go about walking like this. I of course have no scum whatsoever, but it'll be useful to some person, I hope. And look, it was just something that I did because I've had lots of people within my immediate circle who've had cancer of late, and a couple of deaths, and some people battling it right now. So it just seemed like a good thing to do, and I'm sure it'll be back pretty soon.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, you look good, so it's not a problem. Guys,
shaved ears off your face.
I'm going to let Kanthan just give us a brief return comment, because it's been a while since you were last here and we haven't spoken about some of the events of the past few months. Anything noteworthy that you want to throw in before we introduce our other guest for the morning?
No, the only noteworthy thing is that hashtag pedopeter, PEDOPETER, has actually been trending on Twitter, but it's been suppressed by Twitter. And I think everyone should go and check it out because it's quite fascinating.
So who is Peter Peter? Is that Joe Biden?
Well, apparently this is what Hunter Biden had saved his father's phone number under on his contact list.
Oh. That's great.
Yes.
Of course, Hunter Biden's such a terrific and upstanding human being himself, right? We'll talk about him maybe a little bit later.
Well, absolutely is. Well, but along those lines, Joe Biden recently released a massive amount of fuel from the U.S. strategic reserves, presumably to drive down the oil price. And it went, and these reserves were sold to a Chinese company, which Hunter Biden is affiliated with. So there you go.
I saw that. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Oh my God. If
Phumi, I've got to say, if I knew you were in studio this morning, I would have come into studio.
That would have. There's no coffee here, Kanthan. I'm just telling you.
I would have brought coffee. Trust me.
All right, so Phumi and Kanthan, this has been a nice reunion, and we've got much to catch up on. But I do want to introduce our guest for the morning because he's the man of the moment and has been for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now, and I hope will continue to be part of the conversation. You know how short our attention spans tend to be in South African news. His name is Ian Cameron. He is the director of community safety at a recently established nonprofit organization called Action Society, which helps victims of violent crime who do not have the financial means to get legal counsel. Now, that doesn't sound like the sort of person who gets into arguments with the police minister, but that's precisely what Ian did the other day. Phumi rightly pointed out when we played the clip the other day that he was very respectful. He was quite adamant and forthright, but he was asking very reasonable questions and was treated very badly by the police minister. Anyway, needless to say, those clips went viral. Everybody's been talking about Ian. He's got a lot of blowback from government officials and from the police. He was actually escorted out of the meeting, despite the meeting being an open forum for any member of the public to attend. And he got shouted down by a very angry and very rattled Minister of Police with his stupid hat on. So we'll talk a little bit about the organization that Ian works for, and we'll talk a little bit about his own life and his background. But let's welcome him to the show first and foremost. Ian Cameron, nice to see you. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you, Gareth. Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be with you. I'm doing very well. Thank you. Better than last week, Tuesday.
So how does it feel to be both a national hero and reviled by some and get this kind of attention in the space of a week for just doing what you would normally do when there were no cameras running?
Yeah, Gareth, it's been very overwhelming, I must say. We didn't realize, look, you obviously saw everything on social media and so on, but my wife and I didn't realize that things went as viral as it did. And on Sunday, we went to the Spur with our daughter. And the next moment, people started coming to the table. And then eventually we were standing in front of Spur with all the waitresses taking photos. And what was also quite amazing was it's happened about 3 or 4 times now where I was in Cape Town and in the Cape Flats where police vehicles would stop next to me and say thank you. And so yeah, so it's been overwhelming, but it's been a very positive week and a half. It feels like it's been one day with no end, but yeah, it's going well, and I think it's gained a lot of momentum, and I see a lot of people starting to openly question and try and keep, in my opinion, these thugs accountable for what they do.
Well, I mean, in the wake of what happened there, a lot of people were also calling for the resignation of Bheki Cele. Besides Bheki Cele, is there anybody else who's given you negative feedback from the videos that have now gone viral?
Not really. I mean, it obviously you've got your little bit of Twitter critics. You know, there's a guy in South Africa called Simba, someone I don't know, apparently he's from ZANU-PF, and he sent me a compliment, and I said, "Thank you, my friend. You know, we need to keep pushing." And the next moment, you know, you've got people saying, "Why are you siding with ZANU-PF now?" So it's this typical cancel culture nonsense that if you just polite with someone, then immediately certain people would see you siding with someone, and but nevertheless, otherwise it's been amazing. I think what's also been exposed so outright by this whole experience was that the majority of people in the country really don't give a damn about what color or culture you are. They just want to survive. They literally want to put food on the table, and they want to be safe while doing it. And I think that's been quite impressive, the way, especially from very, very poor township communities, you know, the messages coming from there of support saying, you know, we couldn't care less who or what you are. Thank you for speaking out. So yeah, it's been an overwhelming experience.
Phumi, I know you watched all of this before I'd even seen any of it. You tipped me off to this. I mean, your reaction was that this man, Ian, had tried so hard to be polite and to bring these important issues to light, and was treated very badly. But is there any stuff you want to add since you've seen the reactions?
So, Ian, you have to tell us where you're from, because my overwhelming feeling when I watched you was, oh man, he's so well raised. His mom must be so proud.
I think I was well raised, apart from that I came from Kempton Park, which raises eyebrows now and then. But I like Kempton Park, so we always make jokes about the East Rand, and but nevertheless, no, I come from a very normal Afrikaans family. Grew up in Kempton Park. We actually moved to England for 6 years, and we for my father's work when I was still in school, and he wanted to, you know, the family decided we want to come back and just be part of South Africa. So came back and yeah, mostly spent the rest of time in Pretoria. And then recently I moved down to the Western Cape, and I'm living in Paarl now, not far from Cape Town, obviously.
So tell us about your work and your organization.
Yeah, so how it started is I actually used to be with AfriForum. I was with AfriForum for about 10 years, and mainly focused on rural safety. You know, people. I wasn't as involved in the political discussion. Our job was literally to work in the rural safety environment, and to try and change the reality there. And it made it quite challenging sometimes, because a lot of people try to politicize the issue quite a bit. But nevertheless, so when I left there in 2020, I just spent some time with my family for about a year, and then I was approached by 2 ex-colleagues of mine that said, look, there's this massive problem with gender-based violence. There's a massive issue with us not having convictions on ground level. So I thought it's a fantastic opportunity to build something where we can try and ensure convictions. And that's when I got involved with Action Society, and we actually developed this model that we now oversee investigations, we assist with investigations, and if the police don't do the investigation, then we do it ourselves. And the same with the prosecution. And so far, so good. We piloted it in December. So it's quite new still. We piloted in the Cape Flats as a space where we want to test it and build the perfect or close to perfect blueprint, and then take it out to other parts of the country. Obviously, after last week, I think there's a good chance, that it will probably grow quicker than it was planned to. But yeah, so what we basically do, to give you an idea, let me give you an example. Let's use the example of the case that I explained to the minister before the whole rant went on. Is a lady called Nosipiwe James in Khayelitsha was murdered in the beginning of May. And what's horrific about her case is how normal severe violence is in certain parts of those areas. So like with that specific case, Nosipiwe was stabbed 100 meters from where 6 people were shot dead 5 minutes before. And everyone was talking about the shooting incident, but no one was talking about Nosipiwe. And she passed away in her sister's arms. And what we then did, obviously, and I don't say this in a derogatory way, but parts of Khayelitsha, it's literally like a slum. Hey, it's not like just township. It's a slum. So we literally, me and 2 of my colleagues, 2 ladies, we went and we drove and we went and looked for her sister, and we spent the morning until we found her. And they just said they haven't had any feedback whatsoever. They haven't heard anything back from the police and so on. And then we started a process to locate the suspect. He was her partner, and we managed to find him in the Eastern Cape, where we then started working with the police to have him arrested and transported back to Khayelitsha. And he's currently being detained in the Western Cape, and he's already appeared in court twice. And it seems, hopefully, that we're going to get a guilty plea before we have to actually go to trial, which is positive. So that's the type of thing we do, and those are the types of cases that we oversee. There are many others I can give examples of, but I think that one's a story that people heard parts of before Minister Tshele's explosion last week.
Sure, it's amazing work that you're doing.
Kanthan, you obviously saw the clips, but isn't it sad that we have to have drama like this in order to get attention for people like Ian, who are doing good work every day, that are trying to help, and there are so many good people, even in the police. We know that there, for every bad policeman there's a good one, and it's sad to me that this stuff sucks all the air out of the room. You have a situation where people are shouting at each other, or in this case, Becky Cele shouting, shut up at Ian. And that's what gets people's attention. They're not really interested in the story. Is this a South African thing? Is it a 2022 thing? Is it a social media thing? Is there any good to be taken from this, in your opinion?
I think that this is kind of a combination of stuff that we've been talking about in the recent past, over the past years, actually speaking, Gareth. And Phumi, you've been talking about this as well. At what point are South Africans going to take responsibility for ourselves to actually start doing things that are actually going to fix society? And, this kind of stuff that you're doing, Ian, what AfriForum is doing in terms of ensuring the securities of our borders, the people who turned out in their masses in July last year to defend their neighborhoods when everything hit the fan, when the rioting took place, all of these are actually very positive signs, Gareth. I don't think we should be sad about it at all. I think we should actually be seizing these moments, pouncing upon them, and making them spread. Phumi, I must say, though, I only got to see the clip with Ian after you mentioned that that he had been very reasonable, and that the minister was doing him a disservice, and I sat and watched it through from start to finish. And I suspect lots of people actually ended up doing that precisely because of the fact that, what the minister was saying. Nobody actually trusts people who cry racism anymore, because it's actually become quite worn out. Ian, by the way, where do we give you guys money?
Oh, that's a very relevant question.
But seriously, look, I mean, you can give us the details towards the end because I think that's an important part of it. But Gareth, this is stuff that we've touched on in the past as well. That
because I was going to ask.
Yeah, what's really required is that we actually need to start as individuals dipping into our pockets and actually making contributions towards all of these spaces that are actually making a real difference in our lives. And the thing is that it doesn't have to be huge amounts. You know, you give 10 Rand a month to one group, 20 Rand a month to another group, and eventually you get a couple 100,000 people who are doing this, and it all adds up. It's significant stuff. And I think this is the start of building these movements that are tackling very specific problems. And it can only get better from here. And of course, coupled with this, we need to find ways to hashtag defund the bastards, as has been my call since the beginning of last year. Let's find ways to not pay tax.
Let's talk about that. And you know what I want to kind of focus on, at least for the next 10 or so minutes, is practical ways that we can make ourselves less dependent on government, practical ways that we can make ourselves more empowered, practical ways that we can take the power back for ourselves. And I think all three of you are well versed in various ways, shapes, and means of doing that. Let's just be practical for the next few minutes and try to figure out ways, first of all, who we can support. Second of all, how we can make things happen, because it's not going to be political parties, as Phumi said millions of times, as you've said too, Kanthan. And Ian, it's organizations like yours that make a difference at the community level, that are helping people to stand up for themselves. How do you guys feel we should attack the practical issues? What kinds of steps should we take in our own lives in order to, A, stop them from getting hold of as much money of ours as they do, B, making ourselves less dependent on the structures of state around us, C, being able to improve the conditions of people in our immediate environment and our families and our friend groups and in our communities that we live in. And D, then also what we can put our energy into, because a lot of people are feeling a bit frustrated at the moment, to say the least. Let's start with you, Pums, because you've always got good ideas and we can start the ball rolling.
Look, I think, Kanthan, I was also going to ask Ian how you fund your operations and how people get involved, because how people get involved. So one way, as Kanthan said, is donate. Like, that's the easiest way. That's the easiest non-committal way. Just send money and somebody else will do it. But you can also, there's clerical work that needs to be done in these situations. You can also give your time. If you can't give 20 Rand, 50 Rand, 100 Rand, you can also give an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours a week. So Ian, you tell us what you guys need and how people get involved.
Yes, I think there are a few very specific things that you need to start with as a foundation.
Your dog needs to get out.
No, she's being very naughty this morning. This is my rescue border collie. And she's incredibly sensitive and she's glued to me. And now this morning she's very jittery. I think you're making her nervous, probably. Nevertheless, so I think let's start with something. I want to use an example from Mkweni, close to Paul. And it's a discussion that I had with someone the other day after this whole thing happened. And we were talking about the example of the boy that was literally taking a poo on the sidewalk the other day when I got there. And he was smiling at me while he was pooing, waving at me, very friendly. And it's so normal. And the reason I use this as an example is that he doesn't understand, and it's not his fault. He doesn't have a toilet or anything. But that being said, the adults in the area, I think we need to somehow influence the general culture of people to have enough self-respect to at least clean up after themselves. Because, and this is something I want to use as the Mitchell's Plain, from the Mitchell's Plain community. I'm astounded that when I get there in the morning, I'm actually going there after this. I'm astounded at how many people literally, with soap and water, wash the sidewalk in front of their houses every morning. So they stand there, washing it with a broom and even with hot water. It's a strange principle to me, but the point is that it feels like people are taking accountability for their self-respect, and they're taking accountability for their direct surroundings, and that definitely makes an impact. So I think there's certain things that start at home. But what we do, I think there are two channels. Now, obviously, we say we need to exhaust all the different remedies that we have in terms of, let's say, for example, taking part in an election, etc. But I know that me included often feel quite, I don't know, hopeless about it. It feels like you vote every time and then it's just back to normal, So
Can I just pause you for a second there? I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something so within our control, is to keep our neighborhoods clean and tidy. I'm really horrified. I was driving along the highway yesterday on my way into the office, and there's just some truck had obviously lost a load of toilet paper or something. There was toilet paper all over the place. I looked on the side of the highway, plastic bags, rubbish, a mess. The grass has grown out of control. And we all go, oh, well, it's the municipality's job. But someone is leaving that stuff lying around. Someone is just throwing that out of their cars. Those people, and what you said here, Ian, is so instructive. If you want the government or you want your fellow citizens to respect you, have some self-respect and clean up after yourself. I love the idea that in Mitchell's Plain, despite the fact that that is one of this country's more controversial neighborhoods, let's put it that way, when it comes to, crime and gangsterism and all kinds of other things, that the people of that neighborhood, and I'll guarantee you it's the women, because that's usually the case in South Africa when there's something being looked after, it's a woman doing the looking after, that they clean up the sidewalk outside their house. I just love that. I think that's something everyone can do. Clean up.
Absolutely. And Gareth, that's like the perfect start of things. It's like the broken window principle. Everyone's heard about what they did in New York to curb crime. It's like the basic thing. And again, the Mitchell's Plain example, the ladies that patrol there, the majority of them are over 60. Okay, they're unarmed, untrained, walk slowly. But when you walk with them, if there are gangsters standing around, they not only greet them by name, but they immediately leave. They don't stand around. And it's because of a certain respect that's been built up over time for the ladies in the community.
All right, I like that. So practical stuff from Phumi and Ian so far. Kanthan, you've always got loads of tips for us. And if we only listened to you, I said at the beginning when I introduced you, if we'd only listened to you months, even years ago, we would all be off the grid like you are.
Well, but there's the question of affordability, Gareth.
Sure.
This stuff was not cheap, as I've told you guys. And
still isn't.
It still isn't. Well, actually, but it's significantly
It's becoming
cheaper.
much cheaper.
Yeah, it's significantly cheaper than when I put it in 2 years ago. So early adopters always, pay the brunt for it. And, there's a couple of lessons that I've learned from this stuff. But the most crucial thing now, in terms of how we effectively strip power from the likes of Becky Clearly and so forth, is to find ways of withholding our taxes from them. And it's been very easy for us to do this at the municipal level because, hey, you can just stop paying the stuff. And if you get disconnected, you can have your friendly neighborhood person come and connect you back to the grid. And that's something that residents in Soweto have been happily doing for a while now. But the biggest problem that we have to deal with as a country is the fact that all of us who are salaried employees, our taxes get deducted automatically by our employers. But the fact is that there is nothing in law that compels employers to be automatically paying your taxes over to SARS. So really what we need to be doing now is to be finding a group of employers who are willing to say to their employees, we are going to pay all of your money directly to you, and it's up to you to decide how to settle your bills with SARS. Now, what's going to happen is that SARS is then going to come after those particular employers, at which point the rest of us need to rally around those employers, support them from a legal basis, and actually fight that all the way. And hopefully we end up with a scenario that's not dissimilar to what we have with e-tolls, where if you have sufficient volume of people who start doing this, then it becomes a cascade, and they're not able to manage it just simply because of the fact that it's too complicated to end up dealing with so many people at once.
You know, Kanthan, you talking about defunding, and we're funding because we're talking about funding now. I mean, I've been very interested to see over the past couple of months, and as you know, the IEC now tells us who funds which party and how much they funded over periods of time. And I have been fascinated to look at the fact that almost everybody thinks that the thing that keeps the powers that be, that keeps the ANC and the political structure in place, is because they pay 350 rands to people, and that it's grants, and the grants are what keeps them in power because people keep voting them for the grants. But actually, it's big business. You know, if you look at who is keeping and how much money they are funneling into the party, which is what they need in order to run big campaigns, to convince people to keep building. And it's the same businesses, the same big businesses. And I think one of the biggest ones is Anglo. Mining houses, and they give everybody money, even the EFF. So, I mean, I think it's just as important to be aware of where the money that keeps the power structures in place comes from. Because you also
we must name and
businesses.
shame. I mean, you mentioned
I'm
Anglo,
gonna
and I
find
think
it.
Pumi must name and shame these businesses that are supporting political parties, especially the ones who are doing nothing but destructive behavior and perpetuating this cycle. So, Ian, based on what Kanthan has said and what Pumi said so far, what are you guys involved in going forward, and where is the biggest need according to you? Because you're on the ground. You mentioned in your complaint to the police minister, you said, come and walk with me, patrol with me, come and see what these neighborhoods are dealing with. What are the issues that are worrying and plaguing the people of Mitchell's Plain, the people of the townships in Cape Town in particular, which, you know, they get a really, really tough rap, these townships in Cape Town. And obviously the Cape municipality, the Cape Town municipality, the DA-run municipality also, we're constantly told, oh, they don't care about the townships. What are the main things affecting people in those townships?
Yeah, so I think there are a few things. Now, apart from the infrastructure challenges, one must remember that the growth of those townships, it's astounding. The amount of people, the influx of people moving to Cape Town for the hope of having something better is terrifying. I mean, if you drive through parts of, I almost want to call it New Khayelitsha, from Mitchell's Plain into Khayelitsha, it's shocking to see the amount of new shacks going up, and it's constant. Hey, it does not slow down. Every single time you go, you see more new shacks being built. So the influx and the pressure on local government is massive, and it's not necessarily an excuse, but it is a very, very difficult task at hand. And I honestly think it's something that is allowed by, for example, the ANC to push people and to put more pressure on local government. And then obviously, before I speak about the actual ground level challenge, the easiest way for the ANC to try and discredit provincial and local government in the Western Cape is by not resourcing the police properly, because so many people that I speak with are under the impression that the South African police service in the Western Cape is a function of provincial or local government. They don't understand that it's a national government function. And I mean, for years on end, you know, we've seen that parts of the Western Cape are severely understaffed when it comes to policing. I mean, they had something like 5,000 vacancies just a year or two ago. It's massive amount. So the pressure is on, but nevertheless, on ground level, Gareth, literally in some areas, it's a case of just surviving the day. That's how dangerous some parts really are. Again, the Taiwan Site C example the other day with the James family, actually, on our way back, we spent about 20 minutes with them again. And on our way back, we drove exactly the same road that what we driven 20 minutes earlier. While we're driving, next moment, police pull up next to the sidewalk, bodies lying there. It's 11:30 in the morning, and a guy was shot there, point blank, and he's just lying there. And some of the cops are like chilling in their vehicles, and you know, and we get out, and I start talking to some of the law enforcement guys, and I say to them, hey, you know, why aren't you just helping to cordon off? And they say to me, firstly, I don't have a mandate because the South African Police Service don't support us as local law enforcement. And secondly, I'm tired of having to get out and risk my life every time when I don't get the support from the police that I need. Now, imagine if that is a comment coming from someone that at least is armed, has got, other support, etc., how the community must feel. So I went, just for interest's sake, and I went and stood between the bystanders. Now, obviously, you can imagine 6'2" white oak standing on a sidewalk in Khayelitsha at a crime scene. Yeah. You kind of stand out a little. But it was amazing when I started speaking to the people. I asked them, hey, what happened? What happened? And some of them, they tried to speak Afrikaans to me. I guess they made the assumption that they should speak Afrikaans to me. And I still didn't understand what they wanted to say. But then they explained to me what had happened. And it was so blasé, nonchalant. Oh, yeah, he was just shot in the head 4 times. It happens. And what shocked me the most was 50 meters from there were kids playing in the street. And then I'm like, how sick have we become that it's normal for kids to play next to a crime scene where someone was shot in the head 4 times? And the same in parts of the Cape Flats. Is the other day I was at a school, and 2 blocks away, the gangs were shooting at each other. And the kids just carried on playing outside. And I'm standing there with my coffee, like, oh my word, what's going on here? And everyone keeps on playing. So that's the challenge. And that's not something that we can fix overnight. It really is an issue.
I think it's important to also understand that it is a countrywide experience, right? So it's
absolutely,
it's not just the SAPS is overwhelmed, and there are not enough police officers. There's not enough visible policing, and it's like that all over the country. In the last hour, Gareth, we were talking about the fact that now we're getting a surge of kind of the reporting on shootings in taverns over the weekend. We saw they spoke about it in KZN. They were reporting about it in Soweto. The violence is endemic, and we live in an extremely violent society, and throughout the country, the police are completely overrun, and the entire system. The police are one part of a system. The other side of the system is the justice system, and it's the court system, and it's getting people convicted, and they're getting people into jail and keeping them in jail, and the entire value chain in that system seems to be broken.
And sorry, I want to add on to this, because this is the part that I feel so passionately about is exactly what you just explained. The reality at some of these police stations, you get there and you speak to some of the detectives, and they really are good people. They are amazing people that do so much with little or no support. And you speak to some of these guys and some of the women, it's this little lady, okay, fighting crime in one of the most dangerous places in the country. She's fearless. She tells me she hasn't had leave for 3 years, okay? And then I ask, how many dockets do you have on your table? And she says 350. How on earth can you investigate 350 cases? It's physically impossible, okay? Then you go to the same station and they don't have toilet seats to sit on. So the morale in the police is broken. And this is the thing, and a very short sentence, is then that's when I get bleak with people like Minister Bekitele, when he shows up at a meeting with tactical response team members, heavily armed. There's a brand new public order policing armored vehicle standing outside. They mark out 18 parking spaces for him, okay? And he gets there with 6 vehicles protecting him, whilst in the exact kilometer radius, there was 2 hijackings whilst he was making his speech. And they could have used those very cops to be fighting that. So there's this major issue, not only with the shortage of resources, but also specialized resources. Remember, in the next 2 years, we're going to lose about 24,000 cops that are going on pension, and that's excluding the ones that are leaving early or resigning. So that's just the pension ones. So we're going to have a serious problem.
All right, so let's talk.
What does an entry-level police officer earn these days?
An entry-level police officer, it depends on the scale, but you can go on probably maximum scale for a constable, I think, is around 13,000 Rand last time I checked per month. And that's another thing. I mean, then you go in gang-ridden areas. Let's say, for example, last night, I think two people were shot dead in Alexandra last night in Joburg. I was just scrolling through reports this morning. So let's use that as an example. And now you've got, say, for example, it's a gang shooting. And that the cop investigating that is a constable detective, fresh out of college, still young, easily intimidated, possibly. And the gang comes to him or her and they say, hey, turn a blind eye to this. We'll pay you 2,000 Rand a month. And it's not necessarily because the cop is criminal, but the absolute fear they live in opens up opportunities to rather do something else. And many of them can get more money in the private sector. So then they leave the police.
Sure.
I just want to make
Any
one
of that
final point,
surprising?
Gareth, before we move on, I just want to make a point with regard to the Mitchell's Plain, which we were talking about right now. I lived in Cape Town for 7 years, from the late 90s to the early 2000s. And, Mitchell's Plain has been pretty much part of my life since the 1980s, because it was a scene of activism. And, when as unionists, we'd end up trekking across the country, inevitably we'd end up in places like Mitchell's Plain. And if you go to Mitchell's Plain today and compare it with the Mitchell's Plain that existed 20 years ago, there's a sea change that has actually taken place in that township. The streets are significantly cleaner. You can drive through without worrying about potholes. There are actual pavements that are clean. There are shopping centers and all of that. And if you go right next door, on the various sides of Mitchell's Plain. Mitchell's Plain is basically, it's got Khayelitsha on one side. It's got Crossroads and Nyanga on the other side. It's got Philippi on the other side. And Mitchell's Plain kind of stands out. And the reason why Mitchell's Plain actually stands out is because it's a DA-run municipality. Unlike those other three where they continue voting for ANC. And, much as the current leadership of the DA pisses me off, the single significant thing right now that we can actually point out to people in those surrounding communities is that, you should actually be changing your voting habits, because you just need to take a look, do a comparison between what it looks like in Mitchell's Plain. And meanwhile, you've got shacks right here. And the DA government in the city actually can't go into those townships and fix it, because of the fact that the ANC cadres out there just drive people out at gunpoint. So I know that a lot of us have this extreme sense of irritation with the DA, particularly since Steenhuisen really is a complete doers, and he talks about stuff that he really shouldn't be talking about, like Ukraine, because he's frankly too young to understand the historical context. But on the other hand, you have people like Papas out in Ngeni who are actually cleaning up neighborhoods, and that's going to set an example to the surrounding neighborhoods. You've got Gaten McKenzie doing the stuff that he's doing as well.
Yep.
Instead of actually pouncing upon these people, we should actually be pointing out to people in the surrounding communities, well, that's a simple thing that you can be doing.
So let's just cast our eye further afield, because Kanthan, I would be remiss to not allow you to speak on international matters. And there are so many to talk about at the moment. I mean, we can focus in on the ongoing deterioration of politics in the United States, but I don't know that that's so interesting. I think maybe an update on the Ukraine and Russia situation, which we haven't referred to in some time. Is there anything going on there that's particularly noteworthy? Do you see any end in sight? This is something I spoke to Dr. Alan Mendoza of the Henry Jackson Society about, and you'll hear that at 8 o'clock this morning. But how do we get out of this? How do we go back to a status quo ante where the Ukraine can produce the wheat and the sunflower oil, and where we can get Russian fuel flowing through the world again without all these stupid sanctions? How do we get past the situation which it seems Russia and Ukraine primarily, and Vladimir Putin more specifically, but also the rest of the Western world has got us into? How do we get back out?
Well, frankly, there's no way that we can get out. And the reason why there's no way we can't get out is because, the definition of insanity is you keep doing the same thing and you expect a different result. And every time the West tries to initiate a particular position around Putin, it actually strengthens his position. And yet they keep doubling down. So so everything, their response is, we need to give Ukraine more weapons, and we need to issue more sanctions. And giving Ukraine more weapons, firstly, the people who are ending up paying for it are the taxpayers in Europe and primarily the US. And every time you issue more sanctions against Putin, all he does is he drives up the price of the goods that he's currently providing primarily to the European Union. So he's made more money from the European Union in terms of oil and gas revenue since the beginning of the year than he made in all of last year put together. So you actually, but you keep doubling down and saying we need more sanctions. But it's a commodity where if you remove major suppliers, it impacts on the global price. Ditto in the case of wheat. Now, what's been happening there is that there isn't a shortage of wheat. What we have is US sanctions that prevent primarily African countries, and nearly everyone from the Horn of Africa down to Rwanda, import their wheat from Russia. And the reason why the African Union leaders have been meeting with Putin is to say, listen, we have a problem that we want to continue buying your wheat, except we have no way of paying you for it. And so what we have is de-dollarization taking place. And as you get a reduction in terms of the value of the dollar, again, people around the world start doubling down and saying, no, we must flee to the dollar as a safe sanctuary. Remember that the Biden administration has printed more money during its time than had ever been printed in the history of the United States before. So you've devalued the currency. You keep pushing down in terms of trying to break the back of Russia and of China now, because they are now turning their focus to China as well. And they don't actually understand that this particular empire, and remember, most empires generally last about 200 years or so. And what we are seeing is the dying days of the American empire. And, I have to say this with a great deal of reluctance, because I love the American empire.
Yes, Kanthan, say it. I'm so glad you're saying it, because we were on this very show when I said that to you.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I must tell you, just simply what I've lost in the US stock market since the beginning of this year is seriously hurting me. But I recognize inevitability. But you are not going to get Biden recognizing this. So
you don't have to pay me 200,000 rands, Kanthan. You don't have to pay me 200,000 rands, Kanthan, like certain ministers are asking. But you do have to say, yes, Phumi, you were right.
Phumi, we never disagreed on this. But Gareth, to get to the question of where does this actually end, if we have a sea change that happens in October when the Americans have their midterm elections, and if you have all of these Trump-backed candidates that actually end up winning, you are going to have a situation where Joe Biden ends up getting impeached. I think that if there is an overwhelming majority that pops up in the House and the Senate, if Joe Biden ends up getting impeached, then you're going to actually force a situation where there's a reversal of this ridiculous policy where you keep flowing more arms into Ukraine. And those arms end up getting sold on the black market to other countries.
Well, I mean, you could impeach Joe Biden, but the only one who wouldn't know that it was happening was Joe Biden. I mean, he's just completely senile, demented, and doesn't know whether he's a teapot or a hockey stick at the moment, does he?
Kanthan, you speak about all those arms getting into the black market. It's fascinating to see that the West can send arms and money into the Ukraine, but are unwilling to send anything out.
Well, it's not that they're unwilling to send anything out. You look at most of the ways in which things can actually end up leaving the Ukraine have been taken out, because they're also the way in which things have been brought in. Now, remember that the European countries and the US have been shipping arms into the Ukraine. And essentially every time there's a particular pathway for these arms to enter the Ukraine, the Russians just simply send in aircraft and take it out. And they recently took out the Carpathian Tunnel, which was the last kind of serious rail link that was able to bring things into the Ukraine. And now they've basically agreed with Turkey that Ukraine is allowed to move stuff out through the port of Odessa and set it out through the Black Sea so that Ukrainian wheat can flow to the rest of the world. But the Ukrainians have a problem because they mined the waters around the port of Odessa and they don't know how to demine it. And the reason why they mined it is because of the fact that the Americans and the American handlers and the British handlers told them this is the thing you're supposed to do.
All right. While we've got Ian, because I mean, as much as we, people like us to cover a range of issues on the Burning Platform, and I do think we've given a little bit of attention, not nearly as much as we perhaps could, to the international scene. Ian, back here in South Africa, the political parties, from your point of view, Kanthan mentioned earlier that certain wards and certain municipalities run better than others, and it depends on who you vote. Have you been receiving calls from anybody to stand for office? Because I know that you're not actually a politician and you're trying to get involved with the community at that level, but are there people who are trying to recruit you?
So I did receive calls from different parties saying that they support me. In fact, 4 or 5 parties saying that they support me and they would like to meet and so on and so forth. But my answer is quite simple, Gareth, is that I will meet with anyone and I will even take part in doing anti-crime type of campaigns and so on with them. But as long as it's not a lip service campaign, as long as it's something that actually does, as long as it's some kind of a solution being implemented. I think it goes back to the cancel culture thing, is that you don't have to agree with everyone on all of their politics, but there's certain ground level issues that we can agree on. So if someone comes to me saying, he's an old, let's say, a group of MK vets that want to go and, I don't know, have a soup kitchen or something. It's a silly example. I'm just sucking it out of my thumb. But the point is that then, yes, I might not always agree with their politics, or whether I do or not. It's a positive thing that they're doing. So no real recruitment, but lots of discussions.
The reason I ask is because there were a lot of people saying, "Oh, you need to run for president," and this happens every time anyone stands up and is counted and shows a bit of leadership in this country. And I by no means want to diminish the role that you already have, or the fact that you managed to do what so few people in this country can do, and that is stand up to powerful politicians in a way that really upsets and riles them. And it's worth maybe discussing why Becky Cele was so rattled by all of this. But it is amazing to me how South Africans are so desperate to be led at the moment that they're screaming at you to become president.
But I think that one of the things that's important to recognize, and I think South Africans, we love heroes so much that we think that there is a hero coming to save us all. But actually, there are lots of different places in which to be effective. I mean, there are thinkers, there are doers,
Absolutely.
and there are activists, and then there are politicians. And really, we need people in all those spheres. We need people that are willing to be on the ground and doing the work. We need people who want to be in positions of leadership. It's kind of like managers and workers in the workforce, right? Is you need all of them. And when people are good at one thing, it does not necessarily mean that they would be good at the other thing. And people have got to be in the places where they are good. And I think Ian is probably great on the ground, working with people, finding the stabbers in the Eastern Cape and bringing them to book. But I think it is just as important to recognize that the space of leadership and the kind of leadership that we're looking for is also around kind of a vision for South Africa. One of the things that we don't have happening for us right now is we don't really know where we're going. There's no one driving because we don't know where we're going.
I think we have a better sense of where we are going than we ever did before.
Where are we going?
In fact, what Ian is now actually doing is, again, it's something that we've spoken about in the show before. It's how do you eat an elephant? And it's one mouthful at a time. And when you have people who are setting up specialized units, kind of the way in which Ian has done we know Imtiaz Suleiman as the example in terms of Gift of the Givers, where he identified a particular niche and does it very well. Ian's doing that. AfriForum is doing that in particular spaces. You have organizations like Outer that are doing that in particular spaces. You have organizations like the Helen Suzman Foundation, which do things in particular spaces. And the more of these organizations that we end up with that start tackling particular pieces of the problem, that's how you actually end up chipping away at this edifice. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all where you try and get in a government that's going to fix it. Look, we know that the ANC is going to drop below 50% in the next election, but it's going to be far more chaotic at that point, because pulling a coalition government together at that point that's going to be able to topple the ANC and to effectively manage the country, no, it's going to be a disaster. But really what all we can hope for is that we have a dysfunctional central government where they're not able to do anything, pass any legislation. And that then allows local government to actually become the real centers of power around the country. And that's how we'll actually start fixing the country slowly. But I think we're on track to do that, Phumi. This is probably the best time that we've had in the country now since Jacob Zuma was elected to office.
And look, we're not going to have a choice but to make sure that communities do certain things themselves. That's how bad it's going to get, in my opinion. And I say that it's going to get bad, but it gives us an opportunity to be accountable for our own surroundings. And I don't say that just easily, because it's going to be hell of a hard work. Like it's going to be a big task, and we need to know there are big challenges ahead. But what I am saying is that maybe that is going to be a time for us to kind of use a more decentralized model where people work together on ground level. Something I must just say is that in terms of policing, I want to go as far as to say that any part of that ministry or secretariat must be completely apolitical, because politics has literally destroyed the South African police service. It's literally become an iron fist for the ANC. It's as simple as that. And it's an embarrassment to people on ground level. I'm talking about cops on ground level. So that one part, I think, if there's something we can do, is that's going to be something where, coalition government or not, we're going to have a serious talk about how to change the current police situation.
Well, I'm very glad that you were able to make time for us today. I know you've been very much in demand the last couple of days, Ian. Please keep up the good work that you're doing and come and fill us in when there's something else going on. We are all ears, and I think we want to know what's actually happening on the ground. We don't just want to have the analysts and the journalists and the people who are kind of observing these things. We want to know from the people who are actually involved in them. You know, it's always that example of the chicken and the pig, and who's involved in breakfast and who's really what's the word that they use?
Committed.
Who's committed?
Yeah. The chicken's involved, the pig's committed. But thank you very much for your work, and thanks for being part of the show this morning. Thank
you very much. It was an awesome discussion. It was such a enlightening discussion, and it was a discussion where I wasn't told to keep quiet once. So thank you very much for the chat.
Shut up, Ian. You. All right, thanks.
Your mic is off.
Ian Cameron off to Mitchell's Plain now. And Kanthan, always good to catch up with you. Thanks for making some time for us this morning. What's news in your life besides the fact that you've shaved your hair? We got a parting shot from you before you disappear for a few weeks.
Well, I'm heading down to Durban tomorrow because I'm speaking at the Tamil Business Warriors Conference at Sibaya Casino on Saturday. Yes.
All right.
My tribe has finally roped me in to do some community-based work. So I'll be doing that. And I must tell you that my project up in Zimbabwe has been going brilliantly, and I've been having lots of fun with it.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. More success to you. And as you said, there are reasons to be optimistic about all of this. The failure around you means that you can take more of that power and that independence on for yourself. It's a reason to smile. Pums, we will see you next week.
Join the
Very good.
CPF,
Thanks,
people.
everybody.
Join the CPF.